Hi, this is not my normal intro, but there are some things I wanted to cover before proceeding with today's video. There are already updates that I'm going to briefly mention here, and I'm going to point you towards an interview that I think you should go watch because it's very important. I do mention a little bit about why I'm doing this video. This is not my normal content. I do cover dangerous people. I have maybe once or twice, but I normally don't cover things that have mainly to do with children. And I don't necessarily cover these kinds of crimes, but the perfect storm of it being having to do with religion mixed with two different kinds of cults, the LDS church and connections in of itself and how Jodi went about that, as well as similarities to multi-level marketing and the kind of cult tactics used in that. And I talk more about why I'm covering this in the video itself, but there are a few things I want to hit on when it comes to Jodi and some things that I have been told about her participation in the LDS church. She is allegedly extremely deep in it. She has her grips on the LDS leaders and allegedly is one of the top therapists, counselors, whatever you want to call her, in the LDS church. Her horrific curriculum is used in the church. I cover that topic a little more later, but I did not put enough emphasis on the fact that she is heavy, deep in leadership in the LDS church when it comes to mental health. Something in particular that I mentioned is that pornography is one of the things that she likes to counsel people on. However, pornography is not seen as a mental health diagnosis or the addiction to it. It's not recognized. And so what I found out is allegedly they charge people by using the billing code of depression. That's how they charge people for that, which is wrong and horrible. The last thing I want to cover is there is an interview out on a YouTube channel called the Mormon Stories Podcast. The niece of Jodi Hildebrandt, who was arrested with Ruby Franke in this situation, speaks out. Her name is Jodi Hildebrandt. Please make sure to watch that because I think it's crucial to the story. I will have that linked down below for you, and I will have pretty much everything that I used to cover this topic down below. Thanks for sticking through this intro. Please know there are trigger warnings throughout this video, and it is not an easy watch. Thanks for listening. Hey, hello, I'm JulieJo. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. If you're not new here, welcome back. I know this topic has been covered a lot by a lot of people, including myself once already, but I want to talk more about the Ruby and Jodi situation. One, because there are updates. Two, because I found out a lot of information on Jodi. And three, because I want to have a conversation a little bit, and in the comments especially, on the fact that they're not the only people like this. Ruby Franke is not the only family/mommy vlogger that is like this. The issue lies in who is like this. We don't know, but we do find out in these updates that people knew and they tried to help. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this or my other content that I normally do, and like the video if you enjoyed it or you think it's important. Let's get started.
I don't care about you and him. I don't care about what has been. I only care about your soft skin. Cause we're still sleeping in my head. I don't care about you and him. I don't care about what has been. I only care about your soft skin. Cause we're still sleeping in my head.
I want to start off by saying I'm a little sicky, so please ignore like my raspiness in my voice, or if I have to cough, I'll try to cut it out. But I want to start off in this video by mentioning that I previously did a video on the situation when it first came out. However, like I said, there are updates and things that I want to talk about. I had many people in the comments ask about Jodi Hildebrandt, who is the person that Ruby has been staying with and whose house the children were found at, as well as the person that Ruby has been working with in the connections situation type of deal, which we'll go into, and just been spending a lot of the last couple years with, it seems. I found this specific website called JodiHildebrandt.com. And this goes into information and reviews. It goes into the license that was put on her probation. It goes into the LDS and her part in it, as well as the child abuse arrest. And you can even contact the people that made this. Now, I cannot say that all of these things are true. I don't know if they're all true. However, there are some things that are absolutely true, and I'm going to trust that the person who created this is likely telling the majority of the truth. So let's talk about Jodi Hildebrandt. This website, JulieJo, goes into information about who she is. She's an author, a life coach, and the founder and creator of Connections Classroom, which is based in Orem, Utah. This website goes more into the curriculum, and a lot of it is strongly based on her 5 years working at a drug rehabilitation center, and then it focuses on treating addiction. So that's what a lot of her curriculum is based off of. They continue after leaving the drug rehabilitation center. Jodi designed and created the Connections 101 course, which is a basis for teaching throughout the various counseling programs that are offered through her Connections Classroom. We're going to go into the reviews and talk more about her license and how it was put on probation and all that happened there when it comes to her being a counselor. But I want to talk about Connections, which is what her and Ruby Franke have been doing. The core teachings of Connections is that for a person to achieve true connection with another human being, they must not be in distortion. So distortion is a broad term defined by Jodi. By taking her course, people learn that they are in distortion by the following. 1, being addicted, whether it's spouse, work, shopping, entertainment, hobbies, anything like that. Living in shame and denial, knowing you are not enough, being codependent in your relationships, living in lust, even being sexually attracted to your spouse, controlling and manipulating others. Jodi asserts everyone is in distortion and all experience the above, but she can help you overcome distortion and live in truth. Jodi teaches that there are 3 core principles that must be developed in order to truly connect with anyone and avoid distortion. If you or others do not practice these principles, they are considered in distortion. So apparently we're all in distortion, okay? I kind of like it. I think I'm going to stay there as long as it's far away from Jodi. Boundaries need to be set to distance yourself from these individuals so you are not drawn into distortion with them. These core principles of Connections are being impeccably honest, rigorous personal responsibility, and humility. She equates these principles of being impeccably honest, rigorous responsibility, and humility to absolute truths when connecting with others, comparing them to the natural phenomenon like gravity. Her stated mission is to spread these teachings to the world so everyone can have healthy, fulfilling, and connecting relationships. She actively encourages you to refer family members to join her program so they too can experience true connections. If they do not learn these new truths from her, they will never truly be able to connect with you or others. The way that she enforces these principles is that they require class members to call other students when they are feeling in distortion. Each week in classes, students are asked to publicly account for the number of phone calls they made that week. Even though shame is discussed at length in the course, this is not considered public shaming. The person who wrote this says, although people are sold on the promise of enduring and deeper connection in their relationships, unfortunately, what they often actually experience is deeper loneliness and isolation from those they love. The person actively trying to implement Jodi's teachings often has diminished emotional intelligence and confusion over loved ones' responses. Jodi implies her teachings are absolute and are the only way to true happiness in relationships. Instead of learning skills to solve problems through positive and healthy communication with others, they are instead required to reach out to untrained and unlicensed individuals in their class on several weekly phone calls. Although weekly phone calls are required for the assignments, they often can develop into daily phone calls with multiple people. These individuals develop a bond by sharing vulnerable experiences with each other and validating each other's experiences. As they continue these patterns, they distance themselves from their families and build stronger relationships with their Connections family. If this is your first time on my channel, I talk at length about multi-level marketing companies, other kinds of scams, dangerous people, and religious cults with my master's degree. To me, this is definitely treading in the water of cult-like activity because they're pretty much shutting themselves out from the rest of the world. They're putting themselves in an echo chamber where they're all agreeing on the same thing. They don't have their own opinions anymore, from what I'm reading, and they all echo what each other says. If someone steps out of the echo chamber, they're exiled. That happens a lot of times. Once you step out of the echo chamber, you're exiled from the rest of the people who are in the echo chamber. And it seems that with these phone calls that are quote unquote weekly, but do turn into multiple a day, That's kind of this echo chamber that they're making. Family and friends are confused about this term distortion, and a whole slew of other new terminology declared to them to be the only and absolute way to connect. They are then encouraged to attend classes so they too can learn how to not be in distortion. If their family or friends ask questions or raise concerns about the teachings, the student often immediately makes a phone call to their connection support group so as to not be drawn in distortion with their family or friends. They then confirm and reinforce Jodi's teachings of one kind of relationship which allows only her teachings and no one else. So in addition to the Connections 101 classroom, they're also encouraged to attend group. It's a weekly meeting with Jodi and other students to discuss in an intimate setting, more isolated with Jodi herself, how they were in distortion the following week. The revenue is allegedly conservatively estimated to be $30,000 a month. The last thing they mention in this article on who Jodi is Jodi often remarks that and relishes the fact that people are either love me or hate me for what I'm teaching. Students she has convinced that her way to connecting relationships is the one and true way love her. These people that her teachings are being applied to usually hate her. So pretty much it's saying the people who pay for Jodi's quote unquote teachings, they love her, they look up to her as some kind of spiritual leader, someone who's going to really change their life, while those that are friends and family members of the people paying for Jodi's lessons don't like her because they see the damage it's doing to the person that they love. We see this a lot in religious cults, obviously, but also in MLMs. We see this as well because, in my opinion, MLMs are commercial cults and fall under that category a lot of the time. They are told they are emotionally and verbally abusive, an addict of all kinds of things, codependent in their relationship, in distortion, not humble, not impeccably honest, and not rigorously responsible. Their spouse, friend, or associate has changed over the course of a few weeks, and they are now the main problem in their relationship. Unless they change and learn these new skills from Jodi, they will be cut off in the relationship. New physical and emotional boundaries will be put in place anytime they or their support group deem you are in a distortion. So that's just a little bit about Jodi. Jodi is heavily involved in the Church of Latter-day Saints. There's a whole section on here, and I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want that to take away from the topic of her license on probation and the child abuse arrest, which we're going to get more into. We're going to talk about the counts. We're going to listen to the voice audio from the police, and we're going to talk about what neighbors and others have said about the situation, what they've witnessed, and end with kind of a conversation about what this means. So, license on probation. Jodi Hildebrandt had her license put on probation by the Utah Clinical Mental Health Counselor Licensing Board for 18 months, effective January 25th of 2012. To have her license put on probation, she should have had her license taken away. The fact that it wasn't taken away is actually a big failure on the Utah Clinical Mental Health Counselor Licensing Board. At this time, Jodi was a porn addiction therapist. Without permission from the person she was counseling on porn addiction, she shared what they talked about with his LDS church leaders and Brigham Young University, which is where he went. The claims made by Jodi were allegedly false, per the man speaking about it, but they led to his loss of privilege in the church and his ejection from BYU. This is a quote from him. "She just lied wherever she went to further an agenda to destroy my life," said the man who objected to bills that were as high as $2,000 a month. "We came there for marriage counseling and she pulled us into her porn marathon." Hildebrandt, a professional counselor, is on probation for 18 months and must meet 22 conditions or she could lose her license. The LDS Church said Wednesday that Hildebrandt is no longer on LDS Family Services referral list due to the case. She is a director of LiveStar Utah County, a franchisee of a national company based in Utah that specializes in pornography and sexual addiction. Excessive use of pornography is not recognized as a disorder by the American Psychiatric Association. The conditions on Hildebrandt's license include working under a supervisor approved by the Utah Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing. The supervisor will sit on videotape or audio tape at least one clinical session a month and review 20% of her patient files, according to a January order from DOPL. The supervisor will also instruct her on issues related to confidentiality, boundaries, and relationships. She may also need to undergo a psychological evaluation and complete treatment if necessary. And in the DOPL order, she agreed that her actions violated state law and the American Counseling Associates Code of Conducts. John Doe said he did not have addiction issues. and that once he began to question Hildebrandt's therapy, which cost him between $1,200 and $2,000 a month, his life started to just completely unravel. He believes that Hildebrandt was using his marriage as leverage for, in his words, for me to pay for everything. I'm going to put the link to the website below because they go through several of the official minutes of the stipulation and order of license on her probation, as well as her probation interviews, her reinstatement of the license, and how to file a complaint with DOPL. So you can go read through all of that, but all of that to say her license was put on probation for 18 months for a very serious reason. Pretty much all in all, the situation is Jodi shared this man's false addiction with two of the most important groups that had control pretty much over his life: the LDS Church and the college he went to. Both of those things to this person are extremely important. And she got both of those taken away. And my guess is because he wanted to stop paying that much money. And she said at one point, if you stop, your life will be destroyed. And I think personally that's a veiled threat. The next thing are the reviews of Jodi Hildebrandt and the Connections classroom. They are pretty intense. So these range from 10 years ago to 3 months ago as of when this was posted. So this is from 3 months ago. I would like to leave a review for others as a warning to avoid Jodi Hildebrandt and her teaching and philosophy at all costs. It cost me a marriage, and she used a shaming me and others in a group I attended as control. My former wife and I had our issues, but it wasn't until we had individual sessions that these distortions she said were there turned into distortions that cost a marriage and a divided family. I once had a billing issue regarding the time of session. She would frequently call me from her car with spotty service, and our conversation would drop sometimes up to 10 to 15 minutes, yet she would charge me for the full session. When I approached her about it, she blew up and started yelling and accused me of trying to get more sessions time paid for. There is not one good thing about her program or her. It should be investigated for fraud and misconduct, for multiple HIPAA violations. She would share, by name, other clients' information. She does more harm than good. Someone referred to her as a wolf in sheep's clothing. I would refer to her as Satan in saint's clothing. Wow. That is a very intense thing to say, especially for someone who's in the LDS Church, saying that about someone else who's in the LDS Church. This person continues, I will be spending as much effort as I can to warn people about her own distortion and shame she puts on others. This is from Calvin 4 months ago when this was posted. They said, Jodi got my kids to believe all the lies their mother told them. She wasn't given permission to speak to their mother. Told the children as a professional to block your father from being able to call, text, or any other communication via cell phone. Anne Marie 6 months ago when this was posted. I wouldn't trust this company. They use brainwashing tactics to manipulate you. They intentionally make you feel bad about yourself and use slander. Please stay away from this company at all costs. They are a scam. This person requested anonymity. This is from 9 months ago when this was posted. I have a different history with Jodi than most. I'm a pretty well-known therapist that was trained under Jodi for a year. As I was trained under her, I saw her tear apart families and destroy relationships. I believe she is evil, and I don't say that lightly. I have done so much therapy for people coming out of her cult who are traumatized by her therapy. I don't have an axe to grind, but I am tired of watching people get hurt by her work. I'm reluctant to speak out against colleagues and other therapists. However, I wouldn't mind somehow, some way, helping people see that she is dangerous. Vincent, a local guide from a month ago, when this was posted, said, they will ruin your family through mind control. They don't want you to think for yourself and critically think. They want to shelter you. They are an actual cult. An actual cult. They also assaulted me, so I'm suing. That's really intense. I mean, there are dozens. There are so many comments here. So many. One from 10 years ago said severe professionals and peers have serious concerns with Jodi. She had been described as combative by her peers. Indeed, in our case where no is involved, Jodi has drawn other erratic and erroneous relationship conclusions. Very unprofessional. One highly acclaimed professor informed me Jodi is one of 2 professionals that would never be recommended to others by their office. So for over a decade, Jodi Hildebrandt and Connections Classroom have been wreaking havoc on families and tearing them apart, as well as trying to gain control of other people, gain control of their mind, their actions, and as Dan said, he would refer to her as Satan in saint's clothing. And then of course we know the last thing, which is the child abuse and the arrest of Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. So they have a press release, and they also have the audio recordings from the police scanner, and it's in 3 parts, which we'll go over. There are several second breaks in between the conversations, which I'll just clip out really quickly. So I'm going to try not to clip out any of what they say, unless it just means nothing. But there are several breaks, so if you see, cuts in that, it's due to that. Jodi and Ruby have been charged with 6 counts. So these are the 3 counts, but there's 6 because there's 2 kids. So they each have 3 counts, 3 charges for each of the children that had experienced this. And before we get into this, I want to give a big trigger warning. It is very upsetting. It is very upsetting what we're about to go through, and it's hard to hear. It's hard to read. And I want you to take a moment and really think if you want to hear what I'm about to say or not. Count 1, aggravated child abuse, a 2nd-degree felony in that the defendant intentionally or knowingly inflicted upon a child serious physical injury, or having the care or custody of such child caused or permitted another to inflict serious physical injury upon said child. And such serious physical injury includes physical torture. Count 2, aggravated child abuse, says the same thing as count 1, except instead of talking about torture, it says serious physical injury includes any conduct that results in starvation or failure to thrive, or malnutrition that jeopardizes the child's life. Count 3, aggravated child abuse. And for this one, it says such serious physical injury includes conduct toward a child that results in severe emotional harm, severe development delay or intellectual disability, or severe impairment of the child's ability to function. Those are very stomach-churning things to read. And to go on with stomach churning, this next section is also very difficult due to the fact that it is going to be the audio recordings from the police scanner. So please beware as we listen to this.
12x11, 12x4, if you can back on a child abuse.
Control Medic 42 and you're 42 on scene. Control 12x11, I'll be 17, I'll back.
I repeat that a 12-year-old male showed up with tape around his legs Thursday asking for help, said he was afraid asking for police.
Copy 17.
Temper?
101 to back.
Temper, he gave the name of Russell Franke, unknown date of birth, or he did give us a date of birth, but I'm not showing any Russells and Stillman. I'll keep looking into that. The RP said he left through the porch of the neighbor's house. 10-4, break 12x11 and 17, just 10-14. The male does have duct tape around each ankle. He's not telling the RP why. And said that there's sores around his wrists and ankles. He's becoming, or correction, the RP is becoming emotional regarding the child's health. I'm going to go ahead and have medical stage on this one. The RP said that he left from a neighbor's of Jodi Hildebrandt in Ivan's 54-year-old female. Not sure if they're related. When asking the RP's parents info, he said his mom is Ruby Franke, unknown where she lives. 12x11, 12x17. I do have a Ruby Franke spelling with an E on the end of Franke, address out of Springville. Only involvement was a traffic offense a couple of days ago. He's also saying that there's 2 of his sisters are back at the home as well.
12x11, 12x5, will you give me a 21? Control 6 Delta 3, will be 82 if 1 female.
Copy 82, 1057.
Do you have an address for that, Jodi? And can you put that on the CAD, please?
Rostina, go ahead.
Stand by.
1 Alpha, can you copy a welfare check? 12x17, it looks like if you're at the looking out the front, go left, it's going to be your RP and the Juber are going to be sitting out on the front porch. No visible weapons. The male is currently wearing a long sleeve and shorts. And medical's 23 as well.
10-4, 3 minutes, medical's in front of me.
Control 428, you can assign me that custodial, I'll be 21.
10-4, I'll send you Jodi's 27 as well.
312, control 1036.
12x511. Hey, 314, the wounds on his leg are pretty good. 10-4.
12x17, can you run a Rose Frank?
Confirming Rose Franke.
12x511, 314, medical's going to transport him, said that his wounds are in need of immediate care.
Copy. Control 10-4, you show myself in 5 heading that way.
7-7, I don't have any Rose Frankies coming back in Stillman or in Utah. I did find a Ruby Franke, which I sent to 12x11, showing an address out of Springville. However, only involvement is a traffic offense a couple days ago.
Control 12x11, 314 as well. The child looks very emaciated.
Copy 81109.
12x5, 12x17, you go ahead with me. He's on the phone.
17, this is 3. Will you just make sure that nothing happens until you get people there to look at what's going on?
4, you want medical to hold off to transport to the hospital?
We need to get some photographs first.
10-4, we're going to have him hold here.
Yeah, if he's alert and breathing, just hang out and wait for us, please.
After doing a little digging, it looks like that 27 I sent you for Ruby Frankie is going to be the one that is associated with the Jodi Hildebrandt. They're both showing as therapists from Salt Lake and associated through social media as well.
12x1711, can you head over here to the road? Control 12x11. What's the address for that Jodi Hildebrandt?
Sorry, which address for Jodi?
Do you have an address for her in Kansas?
Yeah, 10-4, she's just a few streets up showing the address of. If mom really is Ruby, I threw her 21 in the call as well from her 27.
Control 12x11. Does she have an address in Springville?
Yeah, 10-4, she's showing up in Salt Lake per her Facebook. Her and Jodi both are therapists showing addresses up or locations for their work up in Salt Lake as well.
Copy, yeah. 10-4, that's going to be the mom.
Looks like we did have an involvement with mom on the 25th of this month. It was a traffic offense in a white Honda. Also in the 28 tier cat as well. 12x11, triple I is going to be negative on mom. I threw the 28 in the call as well.
Control, about what time did this get called in?
The call was created at 11:02. 12x11, I think I may have found Dad. Also a Kevin Frankie address out of Springville.
No, it's a business, so just come in and come upstairs. She's in the bathroom.
Copy.
2 Delta 14, I can't get that 28 to return for this attempt tag.
Just 1049 did run also a vehicle search on Jodi. She's showing a white Lexus ES sedan.
12x1711, that's going to be there. She's was the one that pulled up next to me on the road.
10-4.
Control 12x11, can you hold there? We're searching the house.
Control, ticked off 1082 with that female.
Checked off a copy 1145.
Holman, you have 3 and 1 that are coming up behind you. Control Tango 1, 1041.
So that was the audio recording. And listen, that got me up. I'm not gonna lie. I had to take a moment. This is Russell. This is the boy that climbed out of the window with duct tape wrapped around his ankles and wounds that the policeman said, wounds that are pretty bad around his ankles and his wrists, which to me indicates that Russell had duct tape or rope or whatever around his wrists and ankles for a length of time, more than just a day. And obviously very emaciated, as the policeman said. And that is heartbreaking. And to know that another one of her children also experienced the same thing. It's, I want to say unbelievable, but to her neighbors and several other people, it's not. Which is where I get mad. I get a little upset when I talk about this next section. Neighbors say they tried to help Ruby Frankie's kids before YouTubers arrest on child abuse charges. One neighbor said she called Utah's Department of Health and Human Services seeking help for their kids. This was posted on September 2nd, so very recent, like less than a week ago. This is from NBC News, and it says, neighbors of Ruby Frankie, the woman behind the 8 Passengers family YouTube channel, was arrested. Several people in close-knit community were concerned when police officers arrived to Frankie's home. 2 neighbors who spoke on the condition of anonymity, citing concerns for their safety, said that they and others who lived near the family had long been worried for the safety of the children, and the neighbors in the community had previously alerted the Utah Division of Child and Family Services. One male neighbor said, "Everyone is just breathing a collective sigh of relief because we thought they were going to come out of that house with body bags." Body bags. They thought the children would no longer be alive. And for some reason, that boils my blood. That just sends me over the moon in anger. Because the neighbors are like, thank God it was just duct tape and wounds, which is horrific. Can you imagine thinking, thank God it was just duct tape and wounds. Thank God they were just malnourished and not dead. I And I'm beside myself knowing that neighbors and other people familiar with what was going on tried to help the kids, and the people who were supposed to be there weren't there. The people whose job it is to protect children weren't there. They didn't. In a video shared with NBC News, law enforcement officers surrounded the home with guns drawn. In a second video, at least 7 police vehicles lined the street. NBC News saw a photo provided by a neighbor showing what appears to be a hole in the home's front door, which I'm guessing is where the policeman had to, like, you know, thrust the door open or try to get in, because Ruby and Jodi probably weren't opening the door. Neighbors said Frankie would insert herself into other neighbors' lives. One neighbor cited an incident in which Frankie gave a sermon-like lecture over what she called inappropriate posters of a woman posing in shorts that were displayed in a garage. I was also curious what happened to Kevin, and it says in this article that Frankie kicked her husband Kevin out of the home last year. She kicked him out. And my hope is that he was kicked out because he was done with what Ruby was doing. I don't think Kevin's a great guy. I think that we saw in plenty of videos that he's not. But I also want to believe that he is not someone that would hurt his children physically as she has. I believe that maybe Kevin was tired of what was going on. Maybe he saw Ruby kind of do that 180 where she was obviously doing horrible things online and like showing her children and was just overall a terrible mother, but not someone who was torturing her children, not someone who was making her children emaciated from not feeding them. Now we do know, obviously she had her child go 7 months without a room or a bed. She made them go without meals at times, but it wasn't to this point. And I'm hoping that Kevin was trying to get her to stop or trying to get things to cool down. I don't know though. I don't know. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. So Frankie did not immediately return multiple phone calls and emails seeking comment about her arrest and allegations from her neighbors. Neighbors accused Frankie of withholding food as punishment for her children, which we've seen. She's talked about on her YouTube. They also claimed that after her husband was out of the home, Frankie would leave the house for weeks at a time with the children inside. She would leave the home for weeks at a time with the children inside. And Frankie took her children out of school and homeschooled them. She homeschooled them. So they didn't have a place to go and be seen and tell. They didn't have adults to tell. A male neighbor said that he remembers that she took away their Christmas one year and that she would say things like they're not repenting correctly, which is a Mormon term for their sinning. Just complete insanity. And this really hurts me to read, so I'm gonna try to keep my cool. The male neighbor recalled how Frankie's youngest daughter, Eve, who is about 10 years old, would wander the neighborhood while her mother was away for prolonged periods after she kicked Kevin and Frankie out of the house. Eve would look for companions in the community, the neighbor said. The neighbor said it did not seem like she was attending school. She would just knock on the door and say, "Hi, can your kids play?" he recalled. And we're like, "Well, they're at school. They won't be home for 3 or 4 hours." And she'd be like, "I'll wait." He added, "She's like this lost child." A female neighbor said she and others in the community had tried to get authorities to intervene for at least a year. The female neighbor said she thought things were bad for the children, but she said she was deeply upset after she learned about the conditions they were found in. "I'm really angry because I spoke up. Other people spoke up," she said, "and nothing happened." The female neighbor said she and others in the neighborhood asked the Utah Division of Child and Family Services to intervene multiple times. The female neighbor said she made an initial call to CPS around September 2022. She then got a voicemail, which she shared with NBC News in response. In the voicemail, a person who identified herself as working for Child Protective Services said she was, in quotes, talking with someone who has some concerns about someone in your area. After that, she said she saw authorities making a wellness check. However, she said no one answered the door for the officers. At some point after the officers left, papers were put in the windows of the home, both neighbors said. So Ruby Frankie, after the officers left, covered up the windows with paper so that no one could see in and no one could see out. The female neighbor said she hopes Frankie's children know that some members of Springville community have long hoped authorities would step in to help them. "I want those kids to know that the community loves them and wants them to be safe," she said tearfully. "If people knew the amounts of tears and time spent talking with law enforcement and CPS over the last year, I want people to understand that. And I want those kids to know that because I think they thought they were abandoned. And you know what? That's not even all of it, but I don't think I can continue. I'm wrecked. I'm not a true crime person. I'm not someone who can talk about that stuff, but I am someone who talks about dangerous people and hates injustice. And this in particular is something that was heavy on my heart that I thought we should have a discussion about. But something else is she's not the only mommy family vlogger like this. They are not the only mommy family vlogger family will experience something awful. Ruby Franke is not the first or the last mommy or family vlogger that we're gonna see, whether it's being called out, right, by their children as they grow, being arrested in her situation, or being exposed. I'm not saying it's all family vloggers. The problem is we don't know which ones. And that's why I fully disagree with family vloggers and mommy vloggers who choose to show their kids and use their kids for money purposes. Listen, you can show pictures of your kids, you can show videos of your kids, you can show your family, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to money and that your children are what make you money, that's when things get serious. YouTube needs to do something about it. If you want someone to go away on YouTube, if you want someone to become irrelevant, you don't go leave nasty comments, you ignore them, you act like they're not even there. You completely stop viewing their content. You are then having them make less money. The best thing you could do to ruin someone's YouTube channel is to stop viewing it. I think if YouTube doesn't do something about family vloggers and really crack down, and the law in the United States as well, I think there should be federal laws on it. I think that things need to happen because money does a lot to people, good and bad, and in this situation, it's done very bad. So thanks for watching, and if you stuck through to the end, thanks. I understand if you didn't, you wouldn't be watching the end anyway, so. I do understand those that didn't, though. I think we should have a further discussion about family and mommy vloggers and I guess daddy vloggers, but there's really not like that many that I know of. But family vloggers in general, in the comments, what should be done? What should YouTube do? What should the laws be? What should we do? What can we do? Thanks for being here. I truly hope your day gets better from this video. Like, I know this video was harsh, but I hope that you spend some time doing something that brings you peace and know that at least one family vlogger's done for. I will say that those charges hold 1 to 15 years each, and I think that she will be in prison for a while. Her and Jodi, they were charged with the same thing. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.